Looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, hey, folks. Welcome to the program this Monday evening. So glad to have you all here. I'm going to paste into the chat room the link for the call-in for the show tonight. If anybody has anything pertinent they want to add to what's going on here. And welcome to the program. This is Scotty Roberts, of course. This is my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. See all the times of the day where you can catch all of my broadcasts and rebroadcast on that station. And those of you who are here know you're already here. This is my YouTube channel where we do the simulcast in video. And that's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. So everybody, welcome tonight. Thank you for being here. I appreciate that you would take your time to be here. And I want to say hey to everybody that's coming in. And so, Field Guy, you were the first one here. You said Jesus can't be Harry Potter. You said Jesus can't be Harry Potter because Harry Potter does spells. And Jesus, well, he's a vigilante. Well, there's spells in there, too. And it's something very interesting. We're going to take a look at some of that tonight. We're going to make an interesting comparison between the characters. And Matt Finn is here. Master Finn, good to see you. And I think Scott Allen is here already tonight. Good to see you, brother. Lucky Stone is here. And, Lucky said, well, this should be interesting. I think it will be interesting. And because I think that there are some comparisons to be made. And we're going to jump into it pretty soon. And you'll see what I'm talking about. And Morgan Snow, good evening. Glad you are here. And Steve Clark, great to see you over there from Kansas. And who else we got? Michelle Canham Free is here. And Elder Barry. And who else? I thought I saw somebody different in there. Maybe not. That's all that's lined up in the chat room right now. And my daughter is standing here, obviously waiting for the show to start so she can ask me something. What can I do for you, Ro?
Can I have your phone?
Sure. What do you need my phone for?
Because Ellery took my phone.
Well, they're going to be home pretty soon. There you go.
Oh, and they're already home. But
there you go. They're home. They just walked in. Shut the door for me, please. My children, I swear, do not wait until I'm on the air and there's no other parent out there. So Rainey just got home with the other kids. And Flynn went off with his uncle, Rainey's younger brother, to go fishing out in the Dakotas, North Dakota. Her brother lives out in North Dakota. And so he went with his grandma, and he went out fishing there since last Sunday. So he's been gone a week again. Now he's got a big canoe trip coming up with Boy Scouts next weekend, a week from now. So no, it's this coming weekend because it's already the 16th. So he's had a full summer of things to do and all of that. So it'll be fun for him. And Doug Stack, I see somebody saying hi to you. There you are. Good to see you, brother. Glad you made it in tonight. Hope the business is going well. Hope all is well for you. Mr. I have lost at least 2 other people off of my body, man. And I'm going to tell you, that picture you put up today, Doug Stack, when you start seeing results like that are tangible, you put on a shirt that when I met you, you were wearing either that shirt or one of the times I met you. And that shirt came out to your waist and covered your waist a little bit. Now it's dropping down to your knees. It's like a dress. So that tells you you've lost a lot of weight and that thing's just hanging on you now. So that's a good thing. Let's see. Father, we cannot sleep without our beatings. Source redacted. So says the Lucky Stone. Yes, my wife was complaining to me today. And I said, yes, all the children need to be beat. Yes, they do. So we'll see what happens. I think they're doing fine. I don't like to spank kids after the fact. I like to catch them in the act. And if they're caught in the act and then they need a little spanking or a swat, that's when you do it. So I'm not too up on spanking them after the fact. So anyway, we're going to talk about tonight about some comparisons, some really fascinating comparisons that can be made between Jesus Christ and Harry Potter. And hence the title of tonight's show. And the title is not original with me. This title is by an author who wrote this book. He wrote this book called Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ. And I don't know if he meant them to be set all together, but he's got no punctuation in his title. Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ. And he's writing about the comparisons. And it's funny. He even says in his subtitle, he calls it the fascinating parallels between 2 of the world's most popular literary characters. Now, I think Jesus is a bit more than just a literary character. And I think that this author is taking the tack that there is absolutely no proof that Jesus existed in history. Well, I think he did. We've talked about that on this very show. We went through a series over a year ago, I think, about that. So we're gonna hop into that pretty quickly here. But before we do, there was something. Oh, here it is. I've shifted so many things around. We're going to be moving in 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. So we have gone from staying here mode to we gotta move house in the next 2 weeks, and by the time we got it all settled, so it'll be busy around here. And I wanted to read a little bit more for you from this book. The Authoritarian Moment by Ben Shapiro. And I think this is an important book. If you have not picked it up, go pick up this book. This is not, you might want to call this politics. This is not politics. This is current events. Yes, it's from one pointed point of view, but I think he's very spot on. He's talking about authoritarianism in America. And as you can see how it's subtitled here, how the left weaponized America's institutions against dissent. So you can no longer dissent if you've noticed that in this country before you are labeled as something. Hey, Chad Sanders. Chad, we're staying pretty close to town here. We live in New Richmond, Wisconsin. Our kids go to school in Somerset, Wisconsin, which is about 12 miles from here. And we drive them into school every day. It's because we used to own a house there when they started school. And we didn't want to pull them out of the school district because we wanted to end back up in Somerset. And we've been here 3 years, and we've been driving them every day. So now we'll be back over there. We're moving this place we're moving into is about 2 blocks from the schools. All 3 schools, elementary, middle school, and high school, are all on the one school row there. And so it'll be good for them. 9/11, says Michelle Canham Free. Not sure what the significance of that is unless you notice the time and you're comparing it to 9/11 or an emergency call or whatever it is. So, nope. Somerset, well, Somerset's as the crow fly. Well, when you're looking at it from out east, you go and you look at it on a map. Wow, Paisley Park's pretty close there. Well, Paisley Park is way the hell out there on the west side of Minneapolis. We're all the way over on the east side of St. Paul, which is to the east of Minneapolis, and further east across the Wisconsin border. So we're I could make it to Paisley Park in an hour. And that sounds like a long drive, but it's all city traffic. You know, it's highways going around the city and so on. So you're going through the metro area. Chanhassen is right out there. That's right. Chanhassen, known for the big dinner theater there, the Chanhassen Dinner Theaters. I've been going there since I was a kid. And that sparked something. Before I get into this real quick, I just want to say I am really looking forward to Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story. Now, I first became familiar with West Side Story because my mom had a big LP record. You remember LPs, you know, they're big, that big, and they were round, and obviously, and they put on the record players. And I didn't know what the movie was. I didn't know anything about it, but I just put it on one day. I had all those old records from things that she bought, and I was listening to the songs on it when I was a kid. And it was really moved me, and I could start to see the pictures of what the stories were about. And I was really surprised when I watched the movie to find out that the story went along with the music in my head. And so now I see that he's doing a remake. Hopefully, it won't be a woke remake. I hope he sticks pretty faithfully to the material. From the look of it on the previews I've seen, they're sticking to a lot of the musical numbers and the dance numbers and all of that. You know, you might not be into dance movies and musicals and all of that, but I really like that one. And so it'll be interesting. Go look at if you haven't seen it, go take a look at the trailer for Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. And you'll get an idea what you're going to get. Hey, Dave Potter. Uncle Dave's in the room, folks. And why, thank you, Chad Sanders. He says, congratulations. I don't know, Field Guy. I have no idea how to answer that question. So if you haven't seen the trailer, go watch it. It's worth watching. Now, on to this, because I want to read a little section of this. I don't consider this politics. It's definitely one political point of view, if you will, or one civics point of view. I see this as current events and civics. And so I want you to hear this. His chapter 1 in this book says, How to Silence a Majority. On November 8th of 2016, a bombastic reality television star became president of the United States. By the way, I've heard people say, how did the television reality show guy get to be president? Well, remember, before he was a television star or reality show star, he was a billionaire real estate mogul that was very well known for what he did. The Art of the Deal, his books, that all came before he was doing TV. So anyway, he got the TV gig because of who he is. Well, anyway, Donald Trump became president despite months of media hysteria and extraordinary attacks on his campaign and his character. Now, I want you to listen to this stuff. This is talking about the authoritarianism. He became president despite the confident predictions of the pollsters and the pundits that he had virtually no chance at all. Most of all, the pollsters and pundits got Trump's level of support wrong because they got Trump supporters wrong. Trump's supporters, they believed, were a diamond-hard core of bigots, annoying but generally unthreatening, a set of deplorables in Hillary Clinton's phraseology. But then Trump won. This presented the political elitist with two possible choices. They could engage in some well-earned introspection. Hey, you should come over here and talk to everybody about, maybe we get somebody that has got some advice for your rotator cuff.
Well, you keep talking. I'm going to finish my salad.
Okay.
Because I'm starving.
Rainey screwed up her rotator cuff today. That's tough on a, it's actually last night on a massage therapy. So,
Impingement of the
therapist.
rotator cuff.
Impingement of the rotator cuff. She'll come and join us for a couple of minutes when she's done eating her salad and I'm done with this section. So let's continue on. Then Trump won. This presented the political elitist with two possible choices. They could engage in some well-earned introspection, considering the possibility that they'd missed something vital in American political life, and re-examining their premises about the nature of the American public. Hold on. Why can't I turn the page? Or they could castigate tens of millions of Americans as moral and intellectual deficients. They chose the latter. And after some initial media coverage in which Brooklyn-based Gucci loafer-wearing would-be journalistic Jane Goodalls covered Trump supporters as mysterious, grunting gorillas in the mist, in which gatherers of the New York University School of Journalism, fresh-faced and bright-eyed after classes with Lauren Duca on how to bitch about Tucker Carlson in Teen Vogue, traveled to fabled, primitive red state America, a chaotic and brutal place, filled with chain restaurants and Walmarts and churches, and characterized by a serious lack of culturally sensitive vegan restaurants and artisanal coffee shops and Planned Parenthood facilities, in which said ace reporters talked to poor old Billy, a down-on-his-luck former factory worker merely aching for some Democratic subsidy programs. The journalistic establishment came to a conclusion. Trump voters were, as they had originally thought, and as Hillary Clinton had once said, deplorable. They were, as Barack Obama had once characterized them, bitter clingers, desperately clutching to God and guns and racism, wearing their hard hats to decaying factories, then turning them in for white hoods at night to terrorize the neighborhood minorities. Trump voters were poor white Americans in dying Rust Belt towns, hoping to stop demographic shifts by voting Trump. It somehow escaped attention that some 2.8 million New Yorkers voted for Trump, or 4.5 million Californians. There are lots of Republicans who don't sit around in diners wearing trucker hats. This was a convenient narrative. It certainly relieved journalists of the obligation to leave their comfort zones, both literally and figuratively. No need to spend a night in rural Ohio rather than the comforts of the Upper West Side, or to bother discussing uncomfortable issues with the rubes. It also allowed journalists to abandon the practice of journalism more broadly. Now, instead of focusing on Trump's policies, they could simply focus on his tweets, the id-driven manifestations of their original thesis. Every tweet could be read as a confirmation of their hypothesis about red state Americans. Now, instead of examining all sides of various political controversies, they could simply assume the sinfulness of their opponents and demand surrender. Journalism became a search and destroy mission, directed not merely at Trump, but at Trump's supporters. This wasn't much of a change, as it turned out. Republicans of all stripes had always been the problem, not just Trump. Before Trump was a glint in the media's eye, the media had targeted a small-town plumber who had the temerity to ask Barack Obama a question about his tax policy. They dug up his tax record, his home address, his plumbing license. Mitt Romney, the most milquetoast human being of the modern era, had been castigated by the media as a racist and a bigot. John McCain, who would later be hailed as an anti-Trump hero, was hit with similar slander. The media itself had shifted on Trump personally over the years. For years, he'd been treated as an easy clickbait, a genial figure of comedy and an outsized figure of wealth and pomposity, an icon of garish frivolity and entertaining charlatanry. And up until the point he declared himself a Republican candidate for presidency, that's how he was seen. Even then, Trump received late-night phone calls from Jeff Zucker and advice from Joe Scarborough, and he won the Republican nomination. Overnight, he became the front head of evil, the font head of evil. Because overnight, he became the symbol of his supporters, not the other way around. After all, it wasn't as though the media would have treated Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio as anything but pariahs had either of them won the nomination. As Trump would later argue, they hated him mostly because they hated his supporters. This created an extraordinary amount of loyalty to Trump among Republicans. Republicans felt that Trump had merely taken bullets otherwise aimed at them. And they weren't totally wrong. The political slings and arrows were aimed at them. Trump just made an easier, more convenient, and more justifiable target. The media wasn't the only institution committed to the narrative that all conservatives, or at least the ones who hadn't flipped and joined the Lincoln Project, earned strange new respect. Were vicious racists, know-nothing xenophobes, bigoted idiots. Nearly every major American institution was committed to the same idea. Conservatives felt the left-wing authoritarianism. They understood it on a gut level, and they hated it. They felt the top-down censorship from social media, which deemed their speech hate speech, and their worldview harassment. They felt the anti-conventionalism from Hollywood, which painted conservatives as the great threat to a more beautiful, tolerant, and diverse country. And from their bosses, who declared their fealty to tolerant liberal ideas, while not so subtly threatening to fire dissenters, and from their friends and family, who told them in no uncertain terms they were not welcome at the table. They saw the revolutionary aggression of the radical left directed against fundamental American ideas and patted on the back by all of America's most powerful institutions. Conservatives were treated as outsiders. Anyone who voted for Trump was to be banned from polite society, to be treated as a gangrenous limb. Better to lop them off from the body politic than allow their poison to fester. In fact, it wasn't enough merely to silence conservatives who didn't actively oppose Trump. Our silence, as the nonsensical woke slogan went, was violence. Conservatives had to be outed. Even those who might not feel themselves sympathetic to Trump had to be outed if they so much as engaged in conversation with Trump voters, or even those open to engaging in conversation with Trump voters. Such discussions, the logic went, would serve to humanize the inhuman, to tolerate the intolerable. Excision of the occasional Trump supporter was utterly insufficient. Exorcism of the very concepts that could lead to the presence of Trump support had to be undertaken. Confessions had to be forced, purity tests had to be administered, struggle sessions had to be initiated. Symbols of loyalty would be demanded, properly self-righteous hashtags on Twitter, anti-Trump bumper stickers on cars, semantically overloaded tautology-laden lawn signs plunked into well-manicured grass. Statements of dissociation would have to be undertaken. Disassociation from newly identified code terms like meritocracy and Western civilization and color blindness. Dissenters would be lumped in with Trump supporters. The Overton window, the window of acceptable discourse, would be smashed shut, then boarded over. And our cultural leftist authoritarians thought it had worked. And so on it goes. And there's more to this. And we'll hit this another night. We'll talk some more about this. Again, The Authoritarian Moment by Ben Shapiro. Well worth having. Field guy, Wisconsin is almost straight north of you. Straight north, almost up to the Canadian border, but you stop at the Wisconsin border. So, Brianna Learman says, I have to order my books for school tonight. All right. What kind of books you need? I think you could probably get some good ideas from this group of people. Let's see, field guy, I already told you. Wisconsin, just straight north of you. Straight line north. Bang. Let's see. I highly don't recommend knocking on my door at 3 a.m. Was that for me? Or Rainey? I see you, Brianna. I see you. Obviously. Field guy. Oh, that was field guy. I saw you. I was just reading. I was doing stuff. So I was doing a show. Sometimes my daughter stands here for 10 minutes before I'll acknowledge her because I'm in the middle of something. Tonight we're talking about not the topic we were just on, which was authoritarianism, which is a good topic. I think it needs to be talked about because we need to be aware that this exists in our culture, our society. But tonight we're going to talk about something that is a little out there in left field. And so what I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to go to a break for about 30 seconds, about a minute and a half, something like that. And so I'm going to go to a break. I'm going to let you guys talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to take this break to make a nice segue into what we're doing. So you guys sit tight. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, I thought I was back on. There we go. Hey, folks, we're back. And you once did a live stream on a throne, says Field Guy. Well, that's good to know. I'm glad that you could do that. I've once had very high important conversations done on the throne. So there you go. So that will give you hemorrhoids. Yeah. So let's dig into something here that the first I want to say what I mentioned at the beginning of the program was that I'm talking about something where somebody is referring to Jesus Christ as a literary character. Now, I understand the background of that phrase, but I think he was more than a literary character. But we're looking at this idea of Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ. It's this fascinating parallel between two of the world's most popular literary characters. And it was a book that was written by Derek Murphy published by Holy Blasphemy Press out of Portland, Oregon. So you already know where he's coming from when you see that stuff. And so I want to start going into explaining what this is and where we're going to take this. And at the beginning of J.K. Rowling's internationally popular phenomenon, Harry Potter, was first viewed with suspicion and then damned outright by religious conservatives. I know my ex-wife didn't want my daughters reading Harry Potter, but because I had custody of them, they could. I disagreed with her. And it was all from the platform that there's something wrong with that because J.K. Rowling's stories encourage children to embrace witchcraft. And the fallout from this controversy has included lawsuits, worker strikes, book burnings, several campaigns to educate Christian families against the evils of Harry Potter. The boy who lived became Jesus's arch enemy, and his arch nemesis, the icon, the rallying point behind which infuriated Christians in the religious right could gain support and a much-needed platform against a society embracing vampires as boyfriends, witches as heroes, and monsters as merely misunderstood. So none of this slowed the success of Harry Potter, whose books and then the movie franchise produced by Warner Brothers have not been only an unchallengeable model for marketing strategy and economic success, but also an integral part of the lives of millions of fans who've watched Harry grow up and grow up with him. My daughters, when these movies were out back in 2004, 2005, 2006, they were reading these books, and we would get the books, and they would buy one copy, and then they'd sit all day for 2 days and read those books. I remember that. They would read a chapter, then give the book to her sister, and she'd read a chapter, and then they give it back. They go chapter by chapter. And and they finished that book in a day or three, and then bemoaned the fact that it would be forever before they saw another Harry Potter novel. And so, and then we went to all the movies. We always went to the midnight shows. I'd let them knock off school on a Friday, and we'd go on Thursday night to the midnight shows, watch Harry Potter. And so you all know how this thing caught on. Now, as you reach the end of the journey of Harry Potter, the final coming of Harry Potter was treated as messianic. Blogs were calling the release of the first installment of Harry Potter 7, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows 1, an historic event. However, the tension between Jesus and Harry had not been forgotten by religious right Christians. A few extremist groups continue to burn books. They protested the movie openings. They mounted the pulpit, or as they said in the Baptist, the pulpit, in frothy defense of Christianity against the madness of modern culture's obsession with wizardry. I even had a couple of books I bought, Finding God in Harry Potter, guys who were trying to defend Harry Potter to the religious right. And so at the same time as all this is going on, the general Christian stance toward Harry Potter has taken a profound shift after the publication of the final book, in which Harry is tortured using the I can't pronounce this word, the cruciatus. You guys know how that's pronounced. It's a thing in the storyline, and I don't remember the word, so I can't pronounce it. Cruciatus. Cruciatus. Curse. So you know what it is. If you're a big Harry Potter fan, you'll know what that is. And that Harry dies a sacrificial death. And he has an afterlife experiences of sorts at King's Cross Station. And then Potter then comes back to life and triumphs over his evil adversary, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. And now these motifs have guided a lot of Christians to ask whether Rowling consciously crafted the Harry Potter story after the Passion of Christ? Is Harry Potter a Christ figure? Is the question that was being asked. And in fact, this question had been asked by sharp-minded readers since the early days of Potterdom. Many bloggers correctly guessed that the details of Harry Potter's final conclusion would mirror the sacrificial death of Jesus. And in 2002, BeliefNet.com hosted an online debate between several scholars who'd published books on the subject called Harry Potter, Christ Figure? Now that the 7th book has been released, these early musings have been justified, especially in light of comments by Rowling herself, to the effect that she knowingly crafted parts of her story around the biblical story of Jesus Christ. And suddenly preachers are making headlines, not for burning Harry Potter, but now for championing him. And Harry Potter is claimed to be a Christian story which parallels the story of Jesus Christ, and thus can help open a dialogue between Christians and a broader public. And yet the most fascinating question has so far been ignored. Why do all these similarities exist at all? And although it's easy to accept that Rowling crafted the literary character of Harry Potter after the figure of Jesus, shouldn't it pique our interest that Jesus, a monumental figure in modern world religion, generally believed to have been historical, I believe he was historical, has so much in common with the obviously fictional fantasy world and character of Harry Potter? And this book will trace the genesis of the story of Jesus Christ as its author and examine the controversy that's concerning the historical founder of Christianity, to see if Jesus can be distinguished from Harry based on the claim that Jesus was a real historical figure, while Harry Potter is obviously a fable. And so the primary aim, I think, in this author's investigation was to increase awareness of the fact that a debate over the reliability of the historical Jesus exists. We've covered that on this show, sometimes very pointedly and specifically, talking about the historical Jesus, and we've covered it in as a subtopic to other topics we've talked about. And I drew the conclusion here on this show that I believe the historical Jesus existed and that there is proofs of his historical existence. You've got all kinds of historians that wrote about him. And so there is a reliability that he existed. But this guy's book, Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ, was a book that really upheld the debate over the reliability of the historical evidence that Jesus ever existed. That the evidence for Jesus is insufficient to prove a historical founder, and that a strong case can be made in favor of a mythological, literary character that was mistakenly assumed to be historical by later Christian converts. And I think what ties into that is when we talk about, remember we talked about many times about first century Christianity and how that differs from what came around by the 3rd century, late 2nd century, early 3rd century. That Christianity itself morphed from one thing to another thing, and that there is a lot of evidence that Jesus was one of the God-men of mystical religions, that he was a real person, but that a lot around him was things that were created by his followers to establish who he was, to take a foothold, and so on. And so rather than launching into all these dated arguments from Christ myth theory, Jesus, Potter, Harry, Christ, is going to move very slowly, establishing the historical basis, the controversies surrounding the historical Jesus, analyzing modern assumptions and pre-establishing beliefs, and pre-established beliefs, and re-examining the critical evidence in the debate. And only after exploring and appreciating the history of the controversy does it move into concrete parallels between Jesus Christ and earlier mythology that took place before him. Did all of you know that there were 12 messiahs prior to the time of Jesus that all reflected all the main points of the Jesus story? This is how we know that he was the God-man that was carried on through mystical religion. And so what was added and what was real is the question. And things that literature that was assimilated into the Jesus tradition. So we're going to look at the universal source of many religious myths and symbols to astrology. The fact that the Greeks and the Romans identified all of the planets as gods and believed that mythological figures and events were placed in the heavens as constellations gives this whole premise very firm ground historically. And finally, Jesus Potter, Harry Christ. It concludes that the figure of Jesus Christ may have been a deliberate attempt to bridge Judaism and pagan thought. And we just came out of bridging Christianity and paganism. Well, they think that the stories, historically, may have had to do with bridging Judaism and paganism, and that stories about this figure were embedded with historical details until a few believers actually began to think he was a real person. And so these claims are going to be substantiated by a thorough examination of pagan and Jewish sources. We're going to get into those. Not all tonight, of course. That's coming. We're going to talk about this stuff for a little bit of time. And early Christian and Gnostic writings, biblical and apocryphal literature, as well as corresponding religious art and sculpture. And I'm going to demonstrate not only that the time was ripe for a deliberate creation of a Jewish national figure based on the pagan mystery gods, but also explore the astrological roots that link all these pagan faiths and modern religious traditions. Now, I will not throw out the baby with the bathwater. I do believe Jesus was an historical person. I do believe there is evidence of this. But I think that there was a lot of embellishment to create the religion as we see it. Matt Finn says, reminds me of a comedy skit about Jesus' evil brother, Craig Christ. It's hilarious. I'm going to have to see that. Matt Finn said, personally, I never cared for Harry Potter that much. I like Lord of the Rings better. Lord of the Rings was my thing. And I would take my kids to see that too. Harry Potter was their thing. And my kids were so influenced by the Harry Potter novels that they still hold that very near and dear to their hearts today. So I'm talking about my older kids. I try to get my younger kids into it. Rainey said, that was your older kids thing. I said, you know what? Flynn is into it. Flynn is really enjoying it. I bought the big picture books, the big, really thick ones where they had an artist go through and re-illustrate the whole book. He's done 3 or 4 of the books now, and they're fantastic. So I enjoy Harry Potter. As a matter of fact, next month when we're in Disney, we're going to take a day or two and go over to Universal and see Diagon Alley, the Harry Potter themed thing over at Universal. So once we recognize that the stories, the parables, the deeds, the words, and all the stories told about Jesus in the Gospels reflect older traditions. We talked about this when we talked about mysticism. And we're faced with the very challenging task of trying to situate a historical founder of Christianity within or behind the tales associated with it. The most common approach shared by both Christian and secular scholars is to insist that Jesus was an historical person upon which pagan tales and stories were naturally assimilated. And we're going to talk about those. And I think that's kind of a weak position, but it's one that I've adhered to. At the same time, I recognize that the idea of a historical Jesus Christ is so deeply ingrained in modern times that it's difficult to raise an alternative theory, one in which the Savior figure of the Gospels may not even be historical, may not have existed in flesh and blood. What does that do to your faith? If you found that Jesus didn't was not a historical human being, that would destroy your faith if you're a Christian. So it's a really tight row we walk here when we look to discuss these things. I have my points of view that I adhere to, but sometimes presenting this information so we can discuss it is very important. Now, a lot of this about Jesus not being historical, to a large extent, is due to the consequences of postmodernism, the disillusion of objective truth in favor of local narratives. And so the failure of historical criticism, with the realization that each researcher projects their own meaning into the evidence, provides the illusion that any interpretation of history is possible, regardless of the corroborating evidence. Now, unfortunately, this loose perception of history as immaterial and essentially meaningless has been applied to Christianity in order to safeguard its very insubstantial history from the voracious criticisms of rationalism. The current disengagement with the historical evidence can't be maintained. And precisely because Christianity's faith is fixed firmly upon its own historical foundation. Remember, I've said if you're going to talk to me about science and history, don't use scripture to back your point. You're trying to back the point of your faith from within the faith. Step outside the faith and give me evidence that Jesus is the Son of God, really and truly died on the cross for our sins, and was resurrected. We don't know for sure. It's an issue of faith. Brianna says, tough for me. I haven't practiced anything religious at all. I'm gonna call that up into the. She says it's tough for me. I haven't practiced anything religious in years. So when we go to my in-laws' side of the family gatherings, I just stand there all awkward. Well, Brianna, you're not alone in that. If you bring up, Samir, I see you in the wings. Hang on a second. Let me finish my thought, and I'll bring you in. When you start looking at history and finding out these things can be interpreted a little different way, you're going to find conflicts of faith. You think I didn't have conflicts of faith and still do? I do. It's a tough one for me to say I think Jesus might not have been historical, but I don't know for sure that he was. So let's call Samir in. Hey, Samir, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling in. How you doing?
Fine. I call you from Syria.
Oh, how you doing in Syria? How is Syria tonight?
It's okay. It's okay. We have some problems, but it's okay.
All right. Yeah, I hear you. So what's on your mind tonight, brother?
I'm listening to you because I am from Saint-Étienne in France, originally in a small city in France. You know this city?
Yes. I know of it. Oh, if you could turn your sound down just a little bit, I'm getting a lot of feedback. Okay.
And I've been to Syria on 2013, and I was very interested in what you told about Jesus.
Yes. So we're going to get a little feedback. If you have headset or earbuds, that'll help. Otherwise, just turn it down a little bit. That's fine. So, I'm glad you're here, and I would love to hear your point of view. So, you have anything more you want to add tonight, or just introducing yourself?
It's a big question, Jesus, because Jesus was Jewish.
Yes.
And he is in the Quran, in Islam. But the question was, in Islam, was it the Son of God or not?
Well, that's a very good question. I was always taught, I was raised Christian. I was in Christian ministry, seminary, and went on to ministry. And I always believed that Jesus was the Son of God, as the verse says, the only begotten Son of God. And the more I studied, however, the more I pulled away from that a bit and said, I don't know that I believe that because I cannot prove that. And the only proof for that is faith. And for me, only having faith as the sole thing which you can latch onto in order to believe something is true was problematic for me. So I wanted to find out. And then you start doing some research and you find there's a lot of people that believe Jesus didn't even exist as an historical character. And I don't go that far with it. And I don't know where to take him. But and one thing that's very clear is Christianity is simply Judaism revised. Jesus was supposed to be the Jewish Messiah. And when the Jews rejected him, according to the story, he offered it to the Gentiles. And so it opened up. And so Christianity is basically Judaism, 102. So what's your thoughts on that?
There are two points which we don't understand in Christianity regarding the Islam point of view. The first one is why you decide to stop the circumcision. You know what I mean, circumcision?
Yep. I do.
The first one. And the second one is the statues. Why do you, there are so many statues and in the churches?
Two things. Circumcision seemed to be something that was linked solely with Judaism. Judaism used circumcision to show almost the way Christians use baptism nowadays. Circumcision was a symbol that you were a follower of Jehovah God, and you were a Jew, and of course, male circumcision, obviously. In Christianity, baptism is supposed to be that thing that you use to show that you were a follower of Jesus. So it was something that was done away with early on in Christianity. Now there's still circumcision today, but it's not so much done in it's not done in Christianity. It's done as a cleanliness thing and so on.
Muslims too do the circumcision. Do you know?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The Muslims too, the Islam too, make circumcision.
Now, do they still do that today? Okay, and that it's something that has gone by the wayside. I think they go by Jesus and his followers saying that Jesus himself said something like, "I am not come to do away with the law, but to fulfill it," but in a prophetic sense, and he supposedly opened up a new covenant with God, that circumcision was supposed to be something that showed that you were Jewish, to show that you were going to worship a temple in Jerusalem, that you were going to perform sacrifice. This was all part of the Jewish system, and supposedly now
not only
go ahead.
Not only Jews. In Islam, it is obliged. It is we need to do it, and I'm going to explain you why.
Okay.
Because the Jews, when they receive the Bible, the Quran, it's exactly the same than all the other books. It's the same. And when Moise received the Bible on the Mount Sinai,
Yes.
on the Mount Yorev, God asked him in the Bible to have this circumcision. Why? Because this is what we call in Islam and in the Judaism the alliance. It means God wants that there is a pure sexuality. God doesn't want in the Bible that we go to everybody. He wants marriage and only one woman, or in Islam, two marriages, but only marriage. So they cut this because they say in the scripture in the Bible, they say it says that this small piece is to take off impurity and to have like in Christianity a Christian life, but only with one woman in your life and not 1,000.
Right. And I understand that. So circumcision was supposed to be a symbol of, it was a physical symbol of what your faith was and what you chose to believe. And so I see it as a thing in Christianity. They did away with that because there was a new covenant. It was supposed to be Judaism has really come to an end. Jesus has fulfilled it and started something new, the New Testament, the new covenant of Jesus. And so it was dropped. I know, well, even Peter, the apostle of Jesus, the disciple, who supposedly founded the Roman church in the first century, even he fought with the apostle Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. They were constantly at odds because Peter was a Jewish Christian, believed circumcision was necessary. Paul said it's no longer necessary. So there was this warring, this great schism right there in the middle of the first century over things like baptism, things like circumcision, the Jewish Christianity versus the Gentile Christianity, and so on. So I think that's why that was done away with, and at least as a religious practice in Christianity. So we'll have to talk some more about this. I'd love to talk with you some more. We're coming close to the end of the show, and I want to wrap up a few things. Come back again, please. I would love to get your insights on some things, Samir. Thank you for calling in. All right, folks, that was interesting. And let's, before we go tonight, I want to, we are drawing in on a close to the show. I want to get through some of this introductory material on this, and we'll take it from there. This topic, Jesus Potter, Harry Christ, isn't an attack on religion of any kind. I don't want anybody to take it that way. I don't want to offend your sensibility and your belief system. And I've said that many times when we talk about these topics. I don't want to attack your religion. I don't want to attack your faith or your belief or anybody's conception of God. It's simply an attempt to tell, perhaps for some people, the first time ever, the actual history of the Christian church. And I think we've done that before on this show when we talked about mystical religion and so on. But a history, and then the Gnostics and so on, but a history that's clearly discernible, even after a millennium of misdirection and wishful thinking. It's a history that really happened, is what we're looking for, and in one particular concrete way, and can be reconstructed based on reliable evidence and testimony. And although some of the ideas that we're going to talk about on this series have been raised before, by me before, much of the evidence and the arguments presented are new. Jesus Potter, Harry Christ, it's a way of maybe providing some answers in a almost a tongue-in-cheek way that nobody else is talking about, and a subject that's been able to provide exactly how this transformation from myth to history occurred, and why anyone would want to combine Judaism and pagan mythology, and how followers of Jesus could believe so fervently in his existence to become martyrs. and how a movement as powerful and long-lasting as Christianity could have even begun around a myth. And so it should be pointed out that this topic is not, unlike contemporary biblical scholars, concerned with trying to find some historical figure who was not named Jesus Christ and replace him with Jesus. So we got it wrong, folks. It was really this other guy, like the Judas of Galilee story, but something else altogether, and who didn't do the things described in the Gospels, but may have been somehow tenuously tied into the tradition that later became Christianity. Instead, we're looking for the character of the Jesus we know, the character fully proclaimed by the Bible, who was so much in common with a fictional character named Harry Potter, and asking whether the deeds and the events ascribed to this Jesus really happened at all, and are thus distinct from other mythical or fictional characters like Harry Potter. And conversely, if it can be shown that the points of similarity are due to Christianity's inclusion of literary symbolism from older spiritual traditions, then Jesus, his originality, and hence his separation from Harry Potter, dissolves. And so our question then is not whether Jesus Christ existed, but whether the literary character recorded in the New Testament was primarily inspired by an historical figure or by previous literary traditions and characters. And that's what we're going to look at as we dig into this character, Jesus Christ. And we're going to look at, starting off really, the historical controversy. And we're going to get tomorrow night into the sacrificial half-breed warlocks. Harry Potter is a Christ figure. Warlocks are the enemies of God. And I don't care what kind of hero they are. They're an enemy of God, and had it been in the Old Testament, Harry Potter would have been put to death. This is what Becky Fisher said. She's a Pentecostal children's pastor. And so we're going to go look into that. So, folks, there it is. I hope you find this interesting. I didn't get a chance to really look at a lot of the comments that were being made. So I couldn't respond to a lot of what you said over in the chat room. And that's why that chat room is there, so you all have the ability to give feedback. Matt Finn says, all I can think of is a 40-year-old version parody video, Harry Twat. Well, you've probably seen it. Yeah, that's out there. So there you go, folks. Robert V., welcome to the show. And now that we're ending, he says, been listening. This is great. I'm hooked. Thank you, sir. We're going to get into this a little bit more throughout the next week or so. You're welcome, Scott Allen. Everybody. Barbie D., good to see you here. I didn't see you earlier. And so somebody's teasing who, I don't know. I don't know if it was me. So, or somebody else, because I was out of touch with the chat room tonight. Sorry, guys. I got to glance over at a couple of spots, but there it is. I see a Roger. Oh, Roger Rabbit made it in. Good to see you, Roger. And Brianna, it was great having you here. Feedback is going to happen no matter what I tried. Everything before. We'll talk about this too. You have the great privilege of being my across the street neighbor, Brianna. So you can come over and we'll talk about it. So, Rainey was here. Somebody said, hey, Rainey. David Potter said that. Maybe you're just saying hey because she was here. And, she's here in the house. So that's all we got, folks. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time and everything you had to say. And Rowan, did you have something you needed to say?
Where's the dog food?
We'll talk about that when I'm done with the show. All right. And so that's all we got, folks. Where's the dog food is the big question I'll leave you hanging with until tomorrow night. So I want to thank you for being here. And as always, you know what, folks? Live long and prosper.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAlanRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, AlanRoberts.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.